Welcome, Trey Abernethy, to Raw and Cooked Vegan.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me, man.
Yep, great to have you, brother. So let's just get right into it. And if you could tell us a little bit about how you were raised, what was your family's thoughts about diet? Was your family at all nutritionally conscious or fitness conscious?
Not particularly. I was raised in the South in North Florida. Ate a typical Southern diet. Lots of meat, cheese, dairy, fried chicken, a lot of fried foods.
Yep.
We did eat a lot of, my mom was a great cook and she cooked every night. So we did eat home cooked meals. But again, like a typical American, we went out to fast food restaurants during the day when we were out and about. We'd, go to Pizza Hut and things like that. So it was a standard American diet growing up. Ate a lot of, I never was like a huge milk drinker or anything, but I did love cheese.
Yeah.
Ate a lot of cheese and ate all meats, chicken, pork, beef, fish.
Right.
And
Okay.
I actually, the first influence of vegetarianism or veganism was through my sisters. I have 4 older sisters, and
That's interesting. I have 4 sisters as well.
Oh wow, yeah, I'm the baby. They were holding out for the boy. But yeah, so like my oldest sister, was vegetarian for 25 years, and my second oldest sister, or actually third, she has been vegan for about 20 years. So
Wow.
they were both big, my main influences as
Right.
far as vegetarian veganism.
So at what age did this transition occur for you personally?
I actually, when I was 12 years old, I attempted vegetarianism for a while.
Okay.
And, going to school, there was a lot of peer pressure. I was made fun of because I wasn't eating meat and dairy. And it didn't last too long, to be honest, because of the peer pressure. And then, my mom wasn't real supportive. She was letting me do my own thing, but, her and her boyfriend at the time were, cooking and eating meat, and it was difficult to do as a 12-year-old.
Okay. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it didn't last too long. And then, I went back to, but that was through my sister's influence, convincing me of, showing me some things and books and, talking about factory farming and stuff.
Really cool.
And that I did take a little stint at vegetarianism, but again, I went back to eating standard American diet, and it wasn't until my mid-20s that I
Right.
decided to give up meat first, and then dairy right after. I actually did it in increments. I first gave up beef and pork was my first things because I knew they were the most damaging, the red meat and the pork. And then I gave up dairy right afterwards, and I was still eating chicken for a while, maybe another year.
Yep.
I was eating chicken and fish, and then I decided to, hey, I'm just gonna give up the chicken, and I had seafood occasionally, but I was eating a lot more plant-based and a lot healthier. Trying to cut out the processed foods and the fried foods and the trans fats and all of that.
Okay.
And then it wasn't too much longer that I decided, hey, I'm just gonna go vegan. I don't want to eat fish anymore. I was learning more about the ethical standpoints of veganism and the state of the factory farming and all that. So that's when it was about 6 years ago that I made the full vegan shift.
Okay. Now, would you say that growing up you were average athletic? Were you into
Yeah,
school?
I've always had a super high metabolism, so I've always been very thin and active. I played sports. I was always out in the woods running around. I grew up. We had 40 acres of woods behind our house that we owned,
Nice.
and I was always outside playing. I'd much rather, even though the Nintendo and all that was around already, I would much rather be outside building forts and playing in the woods than sitting in front of a TV. So I've always been very active, I think, and you know, pretty healthy as far as not prone to sinus infections or you know, colds and flus like a lot of other people were, even though I was eating mostly a standard American diet.
Okay, yeah. Acne, anything like that?
I did have some acne in my teens, but nothing severe. I never had any problems with like psoriasis or any other skin conditions. But I did have some acne. Some warts popped up when I was a teen.
Yep.
Some dandruff, things like that. But
Okay.
never any like serious illness or disease.
Okay. And for that brief stint when you were 12 and you tried to do veganism, how long would you say that lasted?
Maybe 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you notice any health effects of that, or were you too young?
I was probably too young, and again, like, even though I was trying the vegetarianism, it was still eating a lot of junk food and pizza, a lot of cheese and things like that. So it wasn't like I was, just pumping down veggies all the time. It was just like, hey, I'm excluding meat, and I was still eating dairy and things. So, the mental connection with the ethical standpoint and even the full health benefits wasn't there yet,
Gotcha. Okay. So when you did make that change, which I guess would have been your late teens, early 20s, can you characterize for us what happened to you in terms of health and maybe some of the...
Sure.
Yeah.
I actually, before I even gave up the meat, I started to, cut out the processed foods. I'd never been much of a big soda drinker, but I would have some occasionally. I decided to, I'm not going to drink any more sodas anymore. Try to steer away from the sugary processed fruit drinks that aren't really, fruit drinks.
Yeah.
And I cut out processed foods. I was, for the most part, I stopped eating at fast food, stopped eating McDonald's or Wendy's or Burger King or any of that. And I made the decision to, hey, because I was really starting to research more into health. I was also studying a lot about philosophy, religion, spirituality, metaphysics. And so there was a correlation, with cleaning my temple and trying to eat more cleanly. And I was, starting to get into yoga and those type of things. So it kind of went hand in hand with the research I was doing.
Gotcha.
Deciding to, eat more cleanly. And so then it was a natural progression to cut out the meat. And I, started with the beef and the pork, and then the chicken, and then eventually all seafood. And I cut out the dairy right off the bat with the beef and the pork. And I did notice, major changes in from cutting out the beef. I think it was more the dairy, cutting out the dairy, because I actually just, not that I was congested a lot, but my breathing got a lot better. My energy levels skyrocketed. I wasn't, lethargic. Like sometimes I would wake up, it'd take me a long time to, hit the snooze 2 or 3 times. After cutting out the dairy and the red meat, I really noticed I was sleeping better. I definitely saw a huge shift in energy, and it was, quite noticeable. And I really linked that to the dairy more than the beef, but that both cutting out those made a huge shift in my health.
Gotcha.
And that's when I started to research more, and with my sister's guidance, she was feeding me PETA information and videos and things, and I was watching those.
Since we're here, maybe you could tell us a little about some of the things you learned of why meat is detrimental to health. I know this may be obvious to many of the viewers, but maybe
Sure.
Perhaps there might be somebody who's clueless. So list for us some of the things that are unhealthy about meat.
I think one of the biggest things why meat is so unhealthy is the way it's processed and raised. I mean, here in most, 99% of the meat that people are eating it's factory farmed raised animals that are kept in, dense confinement. They're sickly because they're kept in such inhumane conditions. Thousands of cattle in one little square 1,000 square meters or whatever, and they're pumped up with antibiotics to keep them well because the conditions that they live in are so terrible. And they're also given growth hormones to speed up the process of them becoming full grown, and so that they can harvest them earlier for the meat. And then also it's the feed that they're given. They, most cattle, chickens, lambs, pigs, they're all fed GMO corn and soy and other, things they're not their natural diet. I mean, a natural diet of a cow is grass, and that's what a cattle should be eating, not grains and the GMOs. I mean, that's a whole nother subject. But genetically modified organisms, if people don't know what those are, do the research, because they're super detrimental to not just the health of people that are eating them, but the health of the planet, because all GMO crops rely on insecticides. They have to be heavily sprayed with insecticides, or there's an actual different process where there's genes inserted into the corn or the soy or whatever that make them actually produce their own insecticide internally. And so then so when bugs eat a piece of the corn, they're actually eating insecticide and makes them explode from the inside. And yet these are safe for humans to ingest. Apparently, according to Monsanto and Bayer and all these other proponents of GMOs.
You gotta wonder about the sanity. When someone characterizes modern culture as psychopathic, I think that's a pretty good example of it. I mean, somebody who's willing to make money off of creating a poisonous food, that's pretty.
And I mean, I don't want to sound too much like a conspiracy theorist, but I think it's way beyond money. Their ultimate agenda is control of the population. And, they're dumbing people down through these chemically laden foods, fluoride in your water. I don't know if your viewers know this, but the fluoride that's put into about 80% of the municipal water supplies in the U.S. is actually a byproduct of chemical fertilizer production. It's a biohazard that these companies used to have to pay big money to take to these special biohazard sites, but now they're getting paid by municipalities to put it in their water. And fluoride, what it actually does is it latches onto your pineal gland, which is the seat of your soul, and it actually calcifies your pineal gland, and so do MSG, high fructose corn syrup, and other chemically laden additives to food that basically they're attracted, your pineal gland, I mean, they're designed to do so. So, fluoride is a terrible additive to the water. It should never be put in water. It's not, there's a lot of conflicting information that it's even good for your teeth topically, because it's in all toothpaste pretty much.
Right.
So, yeah.
All excellent points. Thank you. Excellent points.
Right.
So yeah, and one of the things that I find most horrifying is when the GMO folks, when they produce these seeds, they make it so that the seeds cannot be reproduce. So that once a plant grows from that, the farmer no longer has the ability to keep growing crops. They become slaves to this source of seed. They can't produce their own seed. It's pretty
exactly. They call it the Terminator seed, and they're trying to create a monopoly. They're literally trying to limit the amount of foods that we can grow. Monsanto has been buying up small seed companies for a long time, and organic seed companies, and either closing them down or completely contaminating their products. It's a concentrated effort to control the food supply in many ways. And in turn, when you control the food supply, you control the population.
Yep.
So,
very, Very, very interesting. All right, but let's go back to your journey. So,
Sure.
so you made this transition. You got rid of beef and I guess the heavy meats and dairy, and then later chicken and I guess fish. And
Right.
and would you say this process from when you first started getting rid of these things to where you became completely vegan, how long did that take?
Not long. Probably about a year and a half, less than 2 years.
Okay.
Uh,
And
yeah.
then once that's great. And then once you became fully vegan, did you start to explore different kinds of veganism, especially?
I did.
Yeah. Like
Yeah, I
I'm
definitely
interested
did.
particularly in the fat levels in your diet.
Yeah, well, at that point, I was still eating a pretty high-fat diet. I was starting to eat more cleanly and cutting out processed foods and things, but I was still eating, some processed foods and still eating fried foods and baked
Yep.
foods. Would still go out to restaurants and, indulge in some heavy desserts, still eating sugar, Um, but I did start. I'd always, made a lot of my own meals. My mother was a really good cook and taught me a lot of things in the kitchen. And I did cook a lot and make my own meals. So after going fully vegan, I started to do more research into health and started to realize, what trans fats were, it took me a while before I really realized that fat was such a problem in the diet.
Yeah.
And that was really not until I started to explore raw veganism when I really started to learn more about a high-fat diet and a high-protein diet, which can be very detrimental. So it took me a while. My father passed away about 6 years ago, and he had a terrible diet. He was a heavy drinker and smoker, and that was a real wake-up call to me to make some changes in my life, because I knew that I did not want to end up like that. When I was 19, I actually had moved back up to Jacksonville, Florida, and started working with my dad, and seeing him, chain smoking cigarettes, and coughing up a lung in the morning, and just spitting up terrible mucus. Like I did smoke as a teen. And I quickly gave up cigarettes at 19 after, living with him and being around him every day and seeing how detrimental and what cigarettes were doing to him. So, I quickly gave those up, luckily at a young age.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Would you say now, even though it took you a while to get in touch with the fat aspects of health, I guess you've already said that this initial stage of veganism was quite a bit better in terms of health when you compare it.
It was a tremendous shift. Not that I, per se was unhealthy, or I didn't think I was unhealthy. I wasn't a sickly person. I didn't get sick often. I thought I had fairly good amount of energy and things, but I saw a huge shift in my energetic levels.
Yeah.
When, cutting out the dairy and the beef and the pork. And,
let me throw something at you, and you tell me if you think this
Sure.
this has any relevance to it. If you were to have a scale of diets in terms of how healthy they are, and you started with SAD at the bottom, and then you move maybe through paleo, vegetarian, high-fat vegan, low-fat vegan, would you say that that's a general progression towards health, or do you say it's more variable than that?
No, I would say it's a general progression. The paleo would be way led down on the scale for me. I think there's not much firm science behind that diet, and you see people initially with health gains from it, but they plateau quickly, and I don't see paleo as a valid diet at all.
Yep.
But yeah, I would think definitely a standard American diet. And then, someone who's lacto vegetarian, and then vegetarian, and, vegan, and then, raw vegan, I think, is at the top, especially low-fat raw vegan, more like an 80-10-10 style diet.
Gotcha. Okay. So is that what you're doing now? Are you eating all raw, or do you still eat some cooked food?
I'm 98% raw, I would say.
Okay.
I'm headed towards. I've done stints of 100% raw. You know, about 5 months was the longest that I've done that. And you know, I've gone back and forth. It's been a long progression. You know, for me.
Yeah.
When I initially got into raw foods, you know, I didn't have any clue what I was doing. I had Dan the Man was actually one of my inspirations in that,
Yeah.
the Life Regenerator. Like I started to watch some of his YouTubes, I guess about 4.5, 5 years ago, and was actually just like really shocked when I found out someone had linked a video or something on Facebook, and I started watching it, and then he was, you know, talking about how he ate all raw, and it was just such a, like, just, it kind of blew my mind. I'm like, wow, you know, someone can live like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's a shock to what's ingrained into our culture, and you know, as Americans, but as a Western society, it's kind of, to me now, it's so much common sense. You know, I mean, humans are the only, you know, species on the planet that cooks their food, and what could be more natural than eating from the earth?
All right.
But you know, at that time it was kind of shocking, but I really liked his energy and his vibe, so I started watching more of his YouTube videos, and I kind of, you know, thought, hey, you know, why not? Let's give it a shot. I'm gonna give it a try.
Cool.
But at that time, I didn't really, you know much about the high-fat diet being detrimental. And so when I got into the raw foods, you know, at first I was eating a lot of nuts and seeds, and you know, finding all these crazy elaborate recipes online, and like spending hours in the kitchen making all these crazy concoctions that were delicious, but didn't, you know, I'd heard all these people talk about the huge energy gain and explosion in energy and how well they felt on a raw food diet. And I didn't see that because I was eating such a, you know, high-fat raw diet at the beginning, and also I wasn't eating enough calories. You know, I didn't come to find that out till later, but I was having terrible cravings for cooked food, and it just wasn't feeling satiated because I wasn't eating enough calories.
Yep.
So, you know, I kind of decided, hey, you know, this isn't working for me. I'm going to, you know, go back to eating cooked food. But once I got into raw foods, it was a progression. I continuously was eating more and more raw foods. You know, I never fell back to, hey, I'm just going to go back to cooked vegan and maybe eat a salad every once in a while, or, you know, whatever. No, it was like I started eating a lot more fruit, started eating a lot more raw foods, and that was a just continued progression to adding more and more raw foods, even though I would slip back into eating more cooked food, you know, periodically.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, something that keeps popping in my mind, and maybe we go into it more in depth later, but I'd like to, while I'm thinking about it, I want to ask you about it. So
Sure.
something that's always interested me is this comparative physiology between humans, primates, and then carnivores and herbivores. And
Right.
and while I realize there are justifiable arguments that say, you know, this is a path that's not really worth going down, it still interests me. And it seems to me that we are very close physiologically to primates,
Sure.
but it seems that in our evolutionary development there's some indication that perhaps the stomach got slightly smaller over these years where we were developing cooking, and
Right.
and also this evolutionary development of amylase, this you know, saliva that relates to breakdown of starches. So I'm
Sure.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I just started reading a very interesting book. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Return to the Brain of Eden. And it's, gosh, I can't even think of the author's name. He's an English guy. It's authored by two people. And basically it theorizes that, you know, man developed in the tropics in Africa for millions of years eating primarily fruit.
Yeah.
And that, you know, we have a deep DNA connection to eating fruit and the hormones in fruits. And
is this Tony Wright? Is it
Tony Wright? Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I just started reading it, just into like the first few chapters, but it's a very interesting hypothesis. And, basically he is saying that once I guess from the last ice age, when man, had to start moving away from the tropics, or was moving into more temperate zones and started to cook food, is actually when, wars started, and more degradation of humans. And it's very interesting. But to get back to your original question, I definitely feel that humans are frugivores by nature, not herbivores, not omnivores, and most certainly not carnivores.
Yeah.
We are designed to eat fruit primarily. It digests the easiest. The nutrients are easily assimilated. The fructose in fruits actually goes right into the cell wall in the bloodstream. Doesn't need a insulin like glucose does to enter the cell wall and feed the cell. It's not processed by the liver. So it's a natural, easy food for humans to eat. We get the most energy from it. It's most magnetically, electrically charged. And I just feel the best myself personally when I eat mostly fruit. And I mean, you just take for an example, if you have, a carrot sitting there or a nice ripe watermelon, most people would, go towards a watermelon naturally. You're more inclined to for these sweet fruits than you are a starchy vegetable, in my mind.
All right. Having said that, and I respect that position. Would you agree that if it's either cooked vegan or raw vegan, obviously your position is raw vegan, low fat is the best. But
Sure.
would you say that you could generally say whether it's either cooked or raw, both of those are significantly better than any other alternative?
Sure.
And then,
Yes.
and then,
Most definitely.
so you could say there's an umbrella of veganism within which there are some different styles, some of which are better than others.
Yeah, I would say that for sure. I believe there's zero need for animal byproducts or meat in a human's diet. Most certainly not dairy. We're the only species that drinks another mammal's milk, and much less, even drinks milk after weaning.
Yeah.
And, to me, dairy milk is meant to turn a baby calf into a 1,000-pound beast, and within a year. There's these hormones, growth hormones, naturally in milk that are highly detrimental to humans. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why you see so many young girls hitting puberty so early, is because of these natural and artificial hormones that are in dairy.
Yeah. I think I totally agree with your point earlier. As we evolved, we moved out of these tropical zones, and then our adaptability enabled us to render foods that would not otherwise be digestible right. through technology, and yet, though that allowed us to survive, it was by no means an ideal diet. Now that we find ourselves in 2015, we were able to ship bananas all around the world. There's really no reason to rely on these substandard foods anymore when we have global access to this natural food.
Definitely. And if you look at some of, these indigenous cultures around the world that are almost exclusively plant-based, like the Hunza, there's some other South American tribes, but the Hunza are, 99% vegan, and they're one of the longest living people on Earth, and some of the happiest people on Earth.
Yeah.
And, there's some South Pacific Islanders that are, mostly almost exclusively fruit eaters as far as getting most of their caloric intake from fruit. And I just, I definitely like to follow my intuitive reasoning. I do a lot of research. I like to hear all points of view of a subject, especially health-wise. But after reading, you know, a lot and assessing it all, I definitely like to listen to my own heart and intuitive reasoning, and some, you know, it's just common sense to me after a while, after so much, you know, dedicated research, that we are meant to definitely, we're vegan, you know, creatures by nature, but frugivores by anatomical evidence. And you know, if you look at our teeth, you look at our intestinal tract, it all points to you know, fruits being our primary source of fuel.
Right. Okay. Very good. Very good. Now I'm going to throw a few nutrients at you. I want you to tell us what conclusions you've reached personally for each one. The first is B12.
Okay. B12, you know, is a tricky subject. I did supplement with it for many years. I haven't been for a while though. I feel like once you and we can get into this a little bit more too about detoxification, which I feel is crucial for anyone to reach their full health potential. And you know, after many years of, you know, most people eating a standard American diet and eating meat and dairy and taking prescription pills, and you know, affected by chemicals in either the atmosphere or the environment or in their water supply or whatnot, you know, we're bombarded in modern civilization with so many you know, chemicals and terrible things that can affect our body, that I think it's super important to really detoxify the body so that you can reach, you know, your full health potential. And fruits are the way to go for detoxification. They're what really moves the lymphatic system, which is the sewer system of your body. And you know, most people's lymph system is very clogged up, and all that cellular waste that, you know, all your cells poop, eat, you know, they have a respiratory system. All of that excrement from your cells has to go somewhere, and the lymphatic system is the vessel that gets it out of your body through your kidneys and out your urine. And you know, modern allopathic medicine, it theorizes that the lymph system drains into the blood, which is absolutely incorrect. I'm a huge student of Dr. Robert Morris. I don't know if you know of him, but he's a naturopath in Florida who has a clinic that, you know, he's been healing people of debilitating diseases for 40 years. He has probably the most successful success rate of healing people of cancer in the world, you know, over a 90% success rate of healing people, you know, from cancer through a fruit-based diet and herbal protocols, you know, using natural herbs. And so, gosh, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. Yeah, I have heard of him. I've it's been a while since I looked at his stuff, but I didn't know he was. Is he a raw fooder himself?
Yes, he is. You know, he does indulge in a little cooked food still. He has a weakness for Indian food, but he's really, throughout the years, he's dug deep into his own healing, and, you know, done, you know, 100 days on orange juice, and you know, done some deep cellular cleansing work through fasting and fruit-based diet. But yes, he's a vegan, and mostly fruit-based, and that's what he recommends for all of his clients, but especially people with serious, you know, diseases like cancer or other like autoimmune diseases and Hashimoto's, things like that. He definitely recommends an all-fruit diet with maybe, you know, a little salad thrown in at night, but definitely no starchy vegetables, because the fruits are really what gets your lymphatic system moving, gets some mucus out of your body, and really jump starts, you know, cellular regeneration and cleansing. Okay.
All right. Now, we'll just say brief. We're going to talk more about this, and you let me know if you are on a schedule at all, Trey. If you have to do anything, let me know.
Yeah, no worries.
All right.
Pura Vida, man.
What's that?
I said Pura Vida. That's the national slogan here in Costa Rica. It just means, it's used as a greeting, hello, a goodbye. It just means pure life, and it's kind of a motto around here.
Okay. All right. would you say that one of the reasons you have ceased taking B12 is that you're living in an environment where you're producing a lot of your own food, and if somebody has their own organic garden, are the chances greater that they're being supplied with B12 from the soil?
Most certainly. And yeah, to get back to the B12, I feel like once you get your body cleaned out, and especially when you are growing your own organic vegetables and fruits, you know, I'll go and pick some greens out of the garden, and they don't need to be thoroughly washed. You know, a little speck of dirt here and there is not going to hurt you, and it's actually probably got some B12 in it. So, you know, that's a good thing. I'll go and pick something off a plant, a tomato or a pepper, and, you know, eat it right off the spot. It doesn't need to be washed. I know how it was grown. You know, it was grown without chemicals and mineral-rich soil, and with a lot of love. So
beautiful.
I think that is true. But also, B12 is a bacteria that is actually produced in your gut. It can be produced internally in your gut. And with a properly balanced flora in your gut, you can produce your own B12. And you know, I haven't had any blood tests done or anything, and I'm probably going to have one done this year just to see where I'm at. But you know, I don't. There are, you know, factors where you can tell if you're B12 deficient. I mean, I don't feel I am. You know, I haven't been taking it. It's been over a year since I stopped supplementing with it.
Yeah.
And I feel great. And I know a lot of other raw food people, you know, like Christina from Fully Raw, Christina, and others that don't take B12 anymore, and they've had blood tests and show that their B12 levels are fine.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems that it's possibly not so much a case of needing supplementation of B12, but rather eating in such a way that you're not destroying your body's own capacity to generate it.
Sure, and I feel like, you know, when your gut flora is very important, and the microbial activity in your gut, and you know, when you're eating acidic food, you're destroying a lot of those beneficial microorganisms and bacteria in your gut.
Yeah.
You know, so when you're eating a very alkaline diet, which, you know, a vegan diet is by nature, you're gonna have a much healthier gut, and you will be producing your own B12, I feel.
Cool. All right, 2 more nutrients I'm curious about. I think since you're in Costa Rica, this next one is probably not an issue at all, but vitamin D.
It's definitely not an issue here. Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of sun. I'm out in the sun all the time, and it wasn't really a problem for me in Florida either. You know. Yeah. But it is with a lot of people up in the northern temperate climates, and I feel it's important to. I don't think it's necessary to supplement with, you know, isolated vitamins. I think that they're detrimental to your health more than helpful. Yeah. Anytime you take an isolated nutrient from a plant, you're going to have problems, because you need to eat that whole food source with all the accompanying antioxidants and phytochemicals to actually get the full benefit, and for your body to process that, you know, fully, and get the uptake of the nutrients that you need. When you isolate it, your body doesn't really recognize it as nutrient. Right. I don't feel.
Okay. And that.
Another point about vitamin D, you know, mushrooms are one of the only plant sources for vitamin D. Most mushrooms do have vitamin D in them, and this is something that most people don't know. But if you take mushrooms and put them out in the sun, the vitamin D content can increase thousands-fold in most mushrooms, and in all mushrooms. For instance, I think shiitake mushrooms, if you go and put them gill side up out in the sun and let them sit there for 2 hours, it's like something astronomical, like over 5,000% increase in vitamin D.
That's incredible. Yeah.
So that's a very valid source for vitamin D in people in temperate climates. You know, eat mushrooms, but better yet, even put them in the sun for a few hours and then eat them. Okay.
Cool, man. And this last one maybe falls under the same information you just gave us, but iodine. Now I have seen recently there was an interesting video posted by Plant-Based Athlete who he talked about, a potato having a significant amount of iodine.
Right.
But raw fooders don't have a lot of sources like that. So what's your take on iodine?
Iodine is a very important nutrient, and especially with, for radiation effects, with, Fukushima going on and, getting into the upper atmosphere and falling out all over the place now. It's very important to have in your diet. And sea vegetables are a very rich source of iodine. And, you can wakame, nori, dulse, kelp. These are all very good sources for iodine. Though you need to be careful now. I wouldn't recommend eating any sea vegetables coming out of the Pacific, per Fukushima.
Yeah.
But Maine has some great sea vegetables coming out of Maine in protected coves, actually certified organic. And there's other sea vegetables from around the world that you can, and eat to get iodine. And there are plant sources for iodine as well. But I feel it's very important. Like, I don't eat a lot of seaweeds and stuff anymore, but I do like dulse. I use that as kind of a salt substitute. I have, and kelp granules. I have a little shaker of those, and we'll put on meals and food as a salt substitute. It gives a nice salty flavor to food.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. These next two categories you kind of touched on a little, and we won't spend a lot of time on them because I want to get into the spiritual side of things. But just briefly, if you could, and you kind of have already done this, but I'll give you another chance to, the ethical aspects of being vegan. So,
okay.
So the ethical aspects. Talk a little bit about what you've learned on your journey regarding that.
Yeah, initially when I first went vegan, it was primarily for health reasons, because I just, after learning more information about how harmful meat and dairy can be, I definitely was doing it for more health reasons. But as I got into veganism and improving my diet, of course, it's a natural to learn more about the ethical implications of meat and dairy eating. And to me, that's, a huge, because, factory farming is really killing this planet. And meat consumption is one of the worst causes of deforestation and pollution on this planet. These factory farms just have, billions of gallons lakes just full of excrement that they just don't know what to do with. It's leaching into the groundwater. Then, the dam wall breaks and it floods a river and contaminates a whole ecosystem. Not to mention the fact that, the Amazon, 3 football fields every minute or something are cut down in the Amazon, mostly for cattle, mostly to clear way for cattle production and soybeans. And, so it's an environmental nightmare, the consumption of meat and dairy. And it's unsustainable. The planet cannot support all these people eating meat and dairy. It's killing the planet in many regards. And that's, to get more, though, that's more of the environmental standpoint. To get through to the ethical stuff, I mean, these are Auschwitzes, these factory farms. I mean, it's, the conditions that these animals are put through during their lifespan is torturous. And not to mention the fact that once they get to the slaughterhouse and then are, butchered, it's terribly, there's no humane way to kill an animal, in my mind. There is no humane meat in my mind. So, and plus, in looking more, into the spiritual side of things, I feel like when an animal is in fear for their life, which all of them are when they're at the slaughterhouse, and then, are killed that way, you're eating some of that emotional energy from that animal. Once it died in fear, it lived a life of hell before it got to the slaughterhouse. And then, it's ruthlessly butchered to satisfy the demand of our culture, when there's absolutely no need for it, because not only is it unhealthy, but it's super detrimental to your health, the health of the planet, and obviously that animal wanted to live. It's a sentient being that did not want to die, did not want to be raised for food, and then ruthlessly butchered, in my mind.
Thank you. Yes. All right. So on to kind of this spiritual thread through your life. So were you raised? Was your family religious when you were young?
Not particularly. I mean, we did go to church when I was young. I was raised Southern Baptist. We went to church every Sunday. But my mom and my dad wasn't super religious. They actually divorced when I was 5 years old. So I was raised by my mother. And she wasn't, highly religious. And we didn't, after divorce, we stopped going to church, when I was probably 8 years old regularly. We would still go occasionally, but it wasn't like a every week thing. And I as a child, I wouldn't say I was overly, definitely wasn't overly religious in any regard. And it wasn't until my early teens that I really started to explore religion and philosophy and spirituality and metaphysics and things like that. And I've always been very curious by nature about life in general and, my place in life and my place in the world. How things operate. And my mother, in my early teens, was getting more into spirituality. She started researching things, reading a lot of books, and that was a big influence on me because, we would talk about things and energy and different things that started to awaken my mind to a greater reality than than I was used to. So I started to read a lot in my when I was young, 14. Started to really get into things, reading a lot of new age spirituality books and things that my mother was passed along to me. I've always kind of I guess been very intuitive and kind of, wouldn't say like psychic or anything, just like definitely could feel people's emotions. I would, kind of like empathic.
Yeah, perceptive, yeah.
Right. And I really started to explore more into that at a young age and was really curious and couldn't get enough of it, really. Just kept reading and researching and doing things. And really, that was throughout my teens. Really didn't get into yoga or anything until my early 20s. But that's a huge part of my life now. I practice yoga every day, really getting into Qigong and looking into Tai Chi. But, definitely yoga is a huge part of my life, and it's helped me progress spiritually big time. And,
all right. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the styles you've explored in yoga? And, well let's start with that.
Sure. I would say when I first got into yoga, it was like power yoga, just like Baptiste style yoga.
Yeah,
I was
vinyasa, yeah.
Yeah, vinyasa style. Was, basically was just like watching some DVDs and practicing and, with my brother-in-law and my sister and, really was more of the physical side of yoga. Initially, it was just I'd started doing the P90X too, and they had a yoga routine in that, which was very intense, and I enjoyed it a lot. I started getting more flexible, and was incorporating that through the P90X, and but then I started to get some other DVDs and investigating other styles of yoga, doing some Kundalini yoga. Which has more fundamental basis in spirituality and breath work and meditative qualities. I started to really get into it in my early 20s, and more like my mid 20s, I guess. and just definitely dove right in and was incorporating it into my daily routine. And, you know, initially it was more of the physical side of yoga, but once I started to explore more and read a bit more on yoga and really getting into the breath work and the meditation at the end of the class, is when I really started to become more of my daily life, and really like definitely started to meditate more, you know, and connect with my inner voice and own energy.
All right.
And
Can you describe for the viewers what that, kind of break it down a little bit? There seems to be a general implication that there's a spiritual side to yoga. And, you know, in the way you're talking about it, it can almost seem like because it's so based in reality and so influences everything you do, it can be seen as ordinary in a sense. And sometimes a characterization of spirituality connotes, you know, something grander than that. Talk a little bit about what is the spiritual side of yoga and how does that manifest in your day-to-day life?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's just as a whole, doing yoga daily or regularly, it just brings such a more sense of peace and calmness to your life, at least to mine. You know, because things can be hectic. You could be stressed out about something or worried about a situation or you know, an event or some deadline you have at work or some schedule. And, you know, you get on the mat and all that stuff just fades away when you start really getting into the yoga and you're working on your breath. Breath work is a big part of yoga, and it's very calming. You know, you can focus on the ujjayi breathing, the deep breathing, the rhythmic breathing, and, you know, you know, obviously your mind's always working. You're having that inner conversations in your mind. And you know, your mind can be very hectic and busy, and but when you're in yoga, when you get down and you focus on the breath work, you know, and those thoughts will pop into your head, but when you go back to the breath, you can almost, you know, you can be in that moment and live more in the present moment on your mat in the yoga instead of worried about, you know, past endeavors or future worries or endeavor, you know. So
it's interesting. It's as though the thoughts don't seem to have the same power in terms of pulling you off emotionally. It's as if,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, it's, you know, you always go back to the breath work, especially, you know, at least I do when I'm you notice yourself, you know, starting to drift away from the breath work. And it's not even when you're in the physical motions and the movements and the poses in yoga, you know, when you really focus on what you're doing and really getting into full extension of that particular move or whatnot, those thoughts kind of fade away. You know, you're more in the moment, you're present, you're practicing with intention, and that mind chatter decreases dramatically. And then at the end of the class, you know, you're in your meditation, and then you're in your corpse pose, and you know, that mind chatter starts to creep back in. But again, I just really focus on the breath work and trying to stay in the moment, and you know, it's a great way. I always like to do yoga first thing in the morning. It's a great way to wake up and to enliven the body, you know, get your muscles working and your nerves and everything, you know, it just empowers you for the day, for me.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. You're making me think, essentially, you could say, broadly speaking, an hour of practice of yoga is an hour of practicing trying to be in the present moment. And,
Sure.
and by doing that practice cumulatively over time, it enhances this ability, or it strengthens, or it makes it more accessible to a person to be in the present moment. And because so much emotional energy and you know, monkey mind nonsense is generated by past or future thinking, by learning to really be in the present, you kind of cut the legs out from under the mind's tendency to dwell in such a way that it cultivates an anxious frame of mind. So
Definitely.
yeah.
Yes, I would totally agree. For me, and my practice is continuously, expanding and deepening, especially since being here at Ardent Light. I've only been back in Costa Rica for about less than 3 weeks. I went back to the States to work. I was there for 4 months. I was here most of last year, and but it's just since I've been here and practicing yoga every day with the owner Hal, who's a yoga teacher, a really great instructor, and we've been doing a set routine every day with little variations and incorporating qigong into my daily routine, which is great because I've dabbled in it over the years a little bit, but I never was like committed and like really making it part of my daily routine, and now that it's incorporated into the yoga practice here, it's amazing, and I'm really exploring more into the qigong and working more with my internal energy and qi, and it's fantastic.
Beautiful. All right. At this juncture, will you, Trey, share with the audience your YouTube channel, your website, any things you want to refer folks to?
Okay. And we didn't really get much, into what we're doing here yet. Basically, what we got going on here, we're in South Central Costa Rica, up in the mountains, on a 60-acre property that's just absolutely incredible. There's a river running right through the middle of the property that has dozens of waterfalls on the property. There's the main waterfall is about 200 feet. And then there's dozens of other waterfalls from 10 to 70 feet on the property, and then there's multiple creeks feeding into it above the mountain with tons of waterfalls, and it's just a nature paradise. And we're in the beginning phases here. We're going to be forming a community, and also a retreat center and a holistic healing center here. So we have big plans, and the main focus is to live self-sufficiently and sustainably, and break free of the monetary system and societal controls. Like, that's our goal here, is to not be dependent upon this fiat currency, dollar, and generate all our own food here. We already have our own water supply, which is a mountain spring. We're getting it, our water from a mountain spring here, gravity fed down to the house in the rancho, and be energy independent. So, and then eventually not be dependent on money at all, be able to produce all of our own food, our water, and our energy, and then for, commodities and things that we need to trade with other farms and communities, and then, have our own kind of cottage industries here where we can, make clothing, create all kinds of things right here from the farm. And that's part of permaculture, which I'm a raw food chef, a building contractor by trade, and a certified permaculture designer.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. Can you briefly for us define permaculture?
Okay, permaculture is basically, it's a design science that incorporates, it's most people see permaculture as agricultural basis, and that's a big, huge part of permaculture. But permaculture is also, it's about, there's three main ethics of permaculture, and it's care of the earth, care of the people, and return of surplus. So basically what we're doing with permaculture is we're looking at, say, okay, for instance, this property. We're going to look at the general layout of the property. We're going to look at the elevation. We're going to look at all the factors and make a master plan to determine where we put buildings, how we incorporate food forests and gardens, where we catch water, where, you look at so many other factors. You look at the animal factors, the weather factors, the shade factors. So basically permaculture is a design science first and foremost, where it creates a better way of living for humanity, it's, you know, obviously permaculture is super organic in all of its farming methods and holistic in its approaches to life in general.
And would you say, would it be accurate to say that permaculture in the farming sense, in the sense of the soil, it necessarily implies sustainability?
Oh, for sure. And see, permaculture is all about regenerating the landscape and making, you know, starting off better than what you found it. So, like, you know, there's people that have literally taken junkyards and turned it into a food forest paradise over a span of time.
Okay.
And so, I mean, permaculture is definitely way more than just agriculture. It's a way of living to where we can live in harmony with nature. We can give back to the earth instead of take it away, like conventional agriculture, you know, is detrimental to the soil. It's you know, spraying chemicals and using herbicides and pesticides and all of these things that kill all the microbial life in the soil, which that's where it all starts. That's, you know, it's super important so yeah, like here we have intentions to be completely sustainable. We're going to be this week I'm working on some vegetable gardens and putting beds in the greenhouse, and we're going to be getting some outdoor beds in place and starting a lot of vegetables. But I have over about 250 fruit trees in the nursery that I started from seed last year that we're going to be planting out a lot of those this year. Be continuously you know, planting more fruit trees continuously. But I'll read you a definition of permaculture. This isn't mine, but it's a short definition and it's more succinct than the way I explained it.
All right.
So permaculture is sustainable land use design. This is based on ecological and biological principles, often using patterns that occur in nature to maximize effect while minimizing wasted energy. Permaculture aims to create stable, productive systems that provide for human needs, harmoniously integrating the land with its inhabitants. The ecological processes of plants, animals, their nutrient cycles, climatic factors, and weather cycles are all part of this picture. Inhabitants' needs are provided for using proven technologies for food, energy, shelter, and infrastructure. Elements in a system are viewed in relationship to other elements, where the outputs of one element become the inputs of another. Within a permaculture system, work is minimalized, waste become resources, productivity and yields increase, and environments are restored. Permaculture principles can be applied to any environment at any scale, from dense urban settlements to individual homes, from farms to entire regions.
All right, beautiful, beautiful.
So I think that's a pretty, you know, succinct definition of what permaculture is and entails, and you know, it's basically just, you know, trying to reverse the madness of modern society and corporatism and you know, mass consumerism, and to kind of get back to nature is one of the fundamentals of permaculture. You know, get back to our roots and away
it's
from.
Kind of like it sounds like generating a healthy ecosystem. It's like participating within an ecosystem and kind of designing and you know, applying human ingenuity within it to facilitate you know, the livelihood of human beings, but without harming the local, you know, land. So
right, yeah, for sure. I mean, the fundamentals, you know, permaculture is all about regeneration and correcting the ills of modern society, and you know, so to kind of get back to what we got going on here, that, you know, that's our main goals here. We know that it's going to take a community to make this happen and flourish here. So you know, we are forming a community. We're also starting an internship program here, which, you know, the interns basically is going to focus on permaculture, natural building, sustainable living, and you know, conscious community building. So it is a paid internship. It's $500 a month, which includes all food, you know, lodgings, and education. And you know, they'll be working with me daily, hand in hand, to and it's kind of a unique opportunity because it's an opportunity to see how a community is forming from the ground up, how all these sustainable systems will be put into place, and how we gradually break free of societal needs and influence, and where we can become self-sufficient.
Beautiful, beautiful. The name of the website, Trey.
The website is called Ardent Light. It's ARDENTLIGHT, ardentlight.com.
Beautiful. All right, and do you also have a website of your own?
I don't know. That's that I'm affiliated with it, and I have a bio on there, and there is an intern page on there, but we'll be updating it over the next few days to reflect some changes.
Okay.
And so yeah, you can connect with me there. I have an email which is trey.abernethy@ardentlight.com.
Okay.
It's trey.abernethy at ardentlight.com. And I do have a YouTube channel that it's called Fruitful Living, and it focuses on the raw vegan lifestyle, permaculture, natural building techniques, conscious living, spirituality, and I will be adding a lot more content over the next few months.
Okay.
And I'm documenting a lot of projects that we have here at the farm going on the YouTube page. And there's also raw vegan recipes. We'll be making more of those and posting soon.
Cool.
And a lot of nature videos. In Costa Rica, waterfalls here on the farm and whatnot.
Okay. How much food do you guys generate for yourselves right now?
Well, the property was bought in last July. I met the owners last summer, and it wasn't until late August when I actually came out and saw their farm and talked more with them about their intentions for community building and their vision for the future. And it was kind of blown away how it related so much to my vision of community and everything. And I instantly fell in love with the property and the land, and had a deep soulful connection to it, and really wanted to be a part of this. But I had already intended to go back to the States to do some work in September, and I was back in the States from September till right at the end of December. I came back a few weeks ago, and so we're not producing a ton of food here yet. There are about 500 banana trees that were on the farm already, so we're producing tons of bananas. We're definitely self-sufficient in those. We have some plantain trees. We have some various other fruit trees that were planted on the property. There's mango trees. There's a soursop tree producing fruit, noni. There's mandarino acidos and some other citrus trees. So we are producing some fruit already. There's papaya. Got a lot of pineapples in the ground, but I'm really gearing up the vegetable production at this point. We converted an old cattle corral that was on the property into a greenhouse, and we're going to be growing a lot of greens and herbs in there, and it's our fruit tree nursery as well.
Beautiful.
And we're going to be installing a lot of beds and starting vamping up the vegetable production over the next few months. Ultimate goal is within 6 months to be completely vegetable sufficient on the farm and not buying any vegetables or herbs. And then, fruit trees obviously take years to start producing, but we're going to be planting many hundreds this year, and hopefully well over 1,000 next year.
Wow. Is this middle of summer for you right now?
Well, there's not really seasons here in Costa Rica. There's kind of like a dry and rainy season. So, the temperatures are pretty constant year round. We're 9 degrees off the equator. So there really aren't winter. There is no winter here. You go up into the very high mountains and it gets cold up there. But there aren't typical seasons like in the States or, other parts of the world. Here in the tropics, there's 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of darkness every day.
Okay.
So
how's your Spanish?
It's getting there. I'm definitely not fluent.
All right.
But yeah, I try to study every day, and I can communicate pretty well. But
All right.
you know, when they start talking real fast, it's can be a challenge.
Let me flip back a little bit to diet just for a second. Are you concerned at all with how many calories you take in a day, and do you have any idea what an average might be?
Not personally. You know, it took me a long time to really dial in my diet and to realize how much calories I need. And like I said before, I have very high metabolism, like extremely high, and I've always eaten a lot of food. You know, on a standard diet, and in converting to vegetarian and veganism, I've just had an insatiable appetite almost, and just eat. You know, so I eat a lot of calories. You know, I eat mostly fruit all day. You know, I eat fruit for breakfast. I eat fruit for snacks. Usually eat a big fruit meal for lunch. And then my dinner is usually is some type of vegetable meal. A lot of times a big salad with, you know, some healthy fat, some avocado or coconut meat in the dressing or just on top. You know, make all my own dressings on the spot. You know, I'm, like I said before, I'm 98% raw, headed towards 100% raw vegan. I might have some cooked food, you know, 3 or 4 times a month typically.
Okay. You mentioned plantains grow on the property. Do the plantains have to be cooked, or is there a way that you can eat those?
No, they don't at all. That's a misconception that a lot of people believe that plantains need to be cooked. They don't. They can be eaten raw. They need to be the skin needs to be all the way black, and you'd almost think it was rotten because they're very starchy. If you try to eat them just with a yellow skin, so they don't ripen like a banana. But yeah, I do enjoy plantains raw.
Cool.
There's particular varieties that we're not growing the one here, but there's a friend of mine in San Isidro who's growing a variety of plantain that would just blow you away. It's the most flavorful, delicious. You know, I definitely prefer bananas over plantains.
Yeah.
We have about 4 or 5 varieties of bananas growing here that were already in place. But I intend to, you know, plant at least, you know, 15 more varieties of bananas here on the farm.
Cool. Let me ask you. You know, I've known some folks who run their own facilities like you guys are doing, and
Right.
one of the things they do is they're able to use their own waste for fertilizer. Now, I know that. Pardon?
You mean human manure?
Yeah, I do.
Right. Yes.
Is that what you call? Okay. Yeah.
Right. Yes. We are going to be installing the composting toilets here. That will be our and all the cabins we build, and you know, the communal structures, and you know, outhouses with composting toilets. And yes, it's a good question. You know, it's one of the best fertilizers you can actually have. I personally wouldn't put it on annual crops like vegetables or greens or anything like that. The only thing that we're going to be using it for is fruit trees to fertilize fruit trees. And it's a process. You really want to let it compost really well with you know, you mix it with carbon and some other vegetable matter, and you have a completely separate compost system for the human manure than you will your conventional composting systems. So it's definitely something that, you know, you have to keep separate. There is, you know, risk of E. coli or other bacteria and viruses that could be accumulated from that. But it's a natural way to manage human waste, and I think you know, the standard flush toilet is a huge waste of energy and water in modern society. And composting toilets are actually very clean, and you know, it's very sanitary if done right.
Yeah, it's a great point. One thing I've heard is that if you're on a vegan diet, the quality of the manure, if you will, is healthy compared to manure of, say, a meat eater.
Most certainly.
So, like if a meat eater was to use human waste on their garden, they're likely to get a lot of problems. But
for sure, I would definitely agree with that assessment. You know, because they're very acidic. People that eat meat, I mean, they have, you know, their body is acidic, and then you're depending upon where they're getting their meat. You know, it's laden with antibiotics, hormones, and chemicals. So that is, you know, passing out and coming through your stools, and definitely would be, you know, wouldn't be good to put in into your onto your fruit trees or your garden.
Right on, right on. All right. So are there any other last points you'd like to add, Trey? Anything that we've missed? I feel like we didn't go into the spiritual side too much, but if there's anything you want to add, feel free.
Right. Sure. Well, basically, you know, what we're trying to do here is to create a new paradigm of thinking for humanity. And not necessarily that we're so innovative with what we're trying to do here, but we really want to create a new lifestyle for ourselves and the community, but be an example for, you know, we want to make this an educational center where people can come either through the internship or as guests to really see how a sustainable eco-village community operates. And, you know, we kind of our philosophy and how we look at life, you know, we're very heart-based, love-based, conscious beings. And we're trying to, you know, definitely embody that in everything that we do. And, you know, I feel consciousness is the driving force of the universe, and we are, you know, co-creators in our own reality. And we can manifest our dreams, and that's kind of what I've done here in Costa Rica. You know, I was very fed up with the rat race in the States. You know, like I said before, I'm a building contractor by trade. I had my own remodeling business for the last, you know, almost 4 years in Florida, and I was working for myself. I made good money, but I just wasn't truly happy. I wasn't pursuing my true passions in life. I was basically just, you know, working for people to pay bills, to earn money so that I could pay for the house that I was never at, and I could, you know, pay the bills. And, you know, it was, you know, that's kind of like a vicious cycle that we're in modern society, that we feel like we have to earn a certain amount of money, and we have to, you know, basically, I mean, so many people are stuck in that vicious wheel where they're not pursuing their true passions. They're not truly happy. They're just, you know, kind of living day-to-day life, working in jobs that they don't really like, and just to provide for themselves and their family. And I was just really fed up with that, man. And I really wanted a new way of life. I wanted to truly get back to nature first and foremost. I wanted to really live off the land, be immersed in nature fully, not in a concrete jungle, you know, not having to drive a car every day on paved roads, and just, you know, I wanted to really get back to how I feel man is supposed to live, because nature's a part of us. We're not, it's not a separate thing where, like, you know, oh, we are nature. It's an intimate part of us. And to really embody that here, it's been truly empowering and incredible. You know, every day I go down to the river and jump in and play in the waterfalls, and it's just crisp, clean, pure mountain spring water. And the water in itself is very healing and cleansing. You know, you can have some stresses and worries, and you go down to that river and just sit under the waterfall, and all that stuff just washes away, man. It's really amazing.
Beautiful, beautiful. It sounds like a gorgeous place. And, you know, I recommend to the viewers to check out your all's site. It's really lovely the way you guys are. It's just a very positive vibe the whole thing has to it. So
right.
I think it's...
Yeah, Knock and Hall, the owners, you know, are really incredible. And their vision for what they want to manifest here at Ardent Light is you know, just so in sync with my way of life and what I want to create for myself. And it's I'm truly blessed to have found them and the property and be able to help manifest this dream together.
That's wonderful. If you could, Trey, tell them I'd love to interview either or both of them as well. And
Okay.
we wish you the best in all your efforts down there. So now,
Sure.
are you down there permanently, or will you occasionally make trips back to the States?
I am going to have to go back and do some work this year. I'm actually going back to Florida in April to attend Dr. Morris's detoxification school.
Cool.
It's actually the last time he's teaching and he's retiring. So I'll be a certified detoxification specialist after taking his course. It's a really in-depth course, and it focuses on detox, but it also teaches some iridology. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes. Yeah.
You can make health assessments through studying a person's irises.
Right.
So yeah, I'm going back to do that in April, and then I'm going to stay a couple of months to work a bit more. I have some jobs lined up, and then my goal is to be back here by mid-July at the latest to start getting some fruit trees planted and starting a fruit forest here, and really digging in and starting a lot of projects.
Very good. Very good. You going to get some of your sisters to come down there and visit you?
Oh yeah, man, they all want to come for sure.
Cool.
They're anxious. My youngest sister, her and her husband took their honeymoon down here, and he's a big surfer. He's been down here for about 7 times on surf trips. So they want to move here. So
cool, man.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, Trey, I want to thank you so much for taking the time, man.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed it, Paul. Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Good luck, my friend.
All right. Thanks a lot, bro.
Yep. Take care.
See ya.